Samantha froze at his words, her breath hitching as if the world around her had gone still. The children's laughter floated ahead of them, innocent and carefree, while behind her ribs a storm brewed. Ethan's voice had been steady, certain, yet carrying a patience that unsettled her more than any demand could have. She glanced at him, searching for cracks in his composure, for some trace of manipulation or a hidden agenda, but there was none. Only quiet resolve. "Ethan," she started, her voice low, almost breaking. "You can't just walk back into our lives, Anne." "I'm not walking back in," he interrupted gently, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm asking to be let in. There's a difference." Her lips parted, but no words came. The warmth in his gaze tugged at her heart, pulling her back to memories she had tried to bury, of late nights when his laughter had filled their home, of mornings when his arms had been her first comfort. She shook her head, forcing herself to look away. Before either could say more, Kyle's voice rang out. "Mommy! Daddy! Come on!" He was already climbing into the car, Kenzie tugging at the seatbelt impatiently. Samantha inhaled sharply, pulling herself back to the present. Without another word, she slipped into the back seat beside her daughter, while Ethan moved to the driver's side. The drive was quiet at first, the twins filling the silence with their chatter. Samantha kept her gaze fixed on the passing streets, though every so often, her eyes drifted to Ethan's hands on the wheel. Strong. Certain. As though even the smallest movements carried meaning. When they reached the house, Ethan parked smoothly, turning to look at her. "Sam," he said softly, his tone more plea than command. "I meant what I said. I'll wait. But I won't disappear this time." Her throat tightened, but before she could answer, Kenzie burst in, holding up her crayon drawing from the night before. "Daddy, look. It's all of us. In front of a big house. With flowers and a dog." Ethan took the paper, his expression softening in a way Samantha hadn't seen in years. He studied the stick figures with reverence, as if they were more valuable than any contract he'd ever signed. "It's perfect," he whispered, pulling Kenzie close. Samantha's heart twisted. Perfect. That's what he made everything seem. Too perfect. Too easy. Later, when the twins had run inside with their Aunt Diana, Samantha lingered at the door, half-turned toward him. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she murmured, her voice fragile, trembling. Ethan stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. "The only promise I intend to break," he said slowly, deliberately, "is the one I once made to stay away." Her pulse stuttered. The air between them thickened, charged with words unsaid. For a heartbeat too long, she didn't move, didn't breathe. And then, with a sharp inhale, she slipped inside, closing the door between them. Ethan stood there for a long moment, her echo lingering in the quiet evening. Then, with a faint smile curving his lips, he whispered to himself, "Time, Sam. That's all I need. And I have all the time in the world." The night fell heavy around Samantha's house, a quiet blanket draped across the neighborhood. Yet inside her chest, quiet was impossible. Every sound, the tick of the kitchen clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, seemed too loud against the rush of her own heartbeat. She moved restlessly from room to room, folding blankets that didn't need folding, refilling water glasses no one had asked for, anything to avoid thinking of Ethan's words. But his voice lingered, low and steady. "I won't disappear this time." Upstairs, Kenzie and Kyle slept soundly, their crayon drawings scattered across the floor like little confessions of hope. Samantha stood at the threshold, watching them. Kyle clutched a stuffed bear to his chest while Kenzie's small fist was curled around a purple crayon. Their dreams were innocent, untouched by the storms of adulthood. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The name glowed like a forbidden secret, Ethan Wright. She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she stepped onto the balcony, the night air cool against her flushed skin. The city stretched wide before her, glittering lights mirroring the chaos inside her. For so long she had built walls, tall, unshakable walls, to keep him out. And now, with just a few words, he was cracking them open again. She gripped the railing tightly. "Don't let him in, Sam. Don't let him make you believe." But deep down, she already knew, belief had never left. Across town, Ethan stood in his penthouse, one hand wrapped around a glass of untouched scotch. The city skyline sprawled behind him, but his focus was on the small drawing in his pocket, the one Kenzie had given him. Crumpled at the edges, colored outside the lines, yet it felt like the most precious thing he'd held in years. He traced the uneven crayon lines with his thumb, a faint smile tugging at his lips. For a man who had closed billion-dollar deals, This little sketch was the only victory that mattered. He set the glass down, picking up his phone again. His thumb hovered over her name. He could call, he could push, but no. Not tonight. She needed space. Patience. He had promised himself that. And this time, he wouldn't fail. Instead, he typed a message, "Good night, Sam. Tell the kids I'm proud of them." He didn't wait for a reply. He knew she wouldn't send one. Not yet. But she would read it. And maybe, just maybe, her lips would curve into the faintest smile before she turned out the light. The next morning, sunlight streamed golden through the curtains, filling the Davis home with warmth. Samantha stirred awake, her body heavy from a restless night. She reached instinctively for her phone, then froze when she saw the unread message. Her breath caught. She read it once, twice, 3 times. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she couldn't bring herself to reply. Downstairs, the twins were already at the table, Diana pouring cereal into bowls while they chatted excitedly. "Mommy, is Daddy coming today?" Kenzie asked, milk mustache already forming. Samantha hesitated, then forced a smile. "We'll see." Kyle pumped his little fist into the air. "Yes. I want to show him my new drawing." Diana caught Samantha's gaze, her expression knowing but gentle. "You can't stop them from loving their father, Sam," she said softly once the kids were distracted. "I'm not trying to stop them," Samantha whispered, almost defensively. "I'm just scared of what it means if he's here again. If he stays." Diana leaned back, folding her arms. "Maybe the question isn't whether he stays. Maybe it's whether you let yourself believe he could." The words hit too close. Samantha busied herself with pouring juice, unwilling to face her aunt's sharp wisdom. At noon, Ethan's car pulled up outside the school gates. The twins spotted him instantly, their shouts carrying across the courtyard. "Daddy!" He bent down, arms wide, catching them both as they barreled into him. Samantha followed slowly, her steps hesitant, but her eyes couldn't hide the way her heart stuttered at the sight. Other parents turned to look, whispers fluttering through the crowd. Ethan Wright, successful, powerful, untouchable, reduced to laughter and sticky little hands tugging at his tie. And Samantha saw it. Not the billionaire. Not the man who had once broken her heart. But the father, the one their children adored, the one she couldn't seem to shut out. As they walked to the car, Ethan glanced sideways at her. "Dinner tonight," he said quietly, almost casually. "No excuses this time." Her brows furrowed. "Ethan." "For the kids," he added quickly, though the look in his eyes told her it was for far more than that. Samantha hesitated, torn between fear and longing. But when Kyle and Kenzie both clapped their hands in delight, her protest died on her tongue. And just like that, the wall she had spent years building cracked a little further. That evening, Samantha stood in front of the mirror far longer than she wanted to admit. Her hands kept returning to her hair, smoothing strands that didn't need smoothing, adjusting the simple blouse she'd chosen, swapping earrings twice before settling on none at all. It wasn't supposed to matter. It was just dinner, for the kids. She whispered that to herself like a mantra, but her reflection betrayed her, the faint flush on her cheeks giving her away. Downstairs, Kenzie and Kyle were already bouncing with excitement, their shoes on the wrong feet, Kenzie's bow lopsided, Kyle's shirt untucked. "Mommy, hurry!" Kyle called, tugging her hand. "Daddy's waiting." When the knock came at the door, Samantha's pulse stumbled. Diana opened it with a knowing smirk, ushering Ethan inside. He wore no suit tonight, just a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the top button undone. Effortless, dangerous. Samantha caught herself staring before she looked away, scolding herself silently. "Daddy!" The twins flung themselves into his arms, laughter filling the hallway. Ethan scooped them both up, his deep laugh echoing. "My champions! You look ready for a feast." Diana winked at Samantha before retreating upstairs, leaving them alone. Samantha crossed her arms, steadying her breath. "Let's go before they explode with anticipation." The restaurant wasn't flashy. Ethan had chosen a quiet bistro tucked on a cobblestone street, warm light glowing from its windows. Inside, the atmosphere was intimate, soft music, the scent of rosemary and garlic drifting through the air. Samantha blinked in surprise. It wasn't his usual scene, not the kind of places he was known for. "You brought us here?" she asked as they settled at a corner table. Ethan met her gaze evenly. "I wanted a place where it felt real. Where we could just be us." Her throat tightened at the simplicity of it. The twins were too busy marveling at the breadbasket to notice the tension thickening between their parents. Dinner was lively, Kyle animatedly describing his science project, Kenzie proudly showing her father how she could spell longer words. Ethan listened intently, eyes alight, making them both feel as though their stories were the most important thing in the world. Samantha couldn't help it. Her gaze softened every time she saw the way he leaned in, the way his laugh rolled warm and deep. But beneath the laughter, a storm brewed. She felt it in the lingering weight of his eyes, in the deliberate way his hand brushed hers when passing a napkin. Each small touch sent ripples through her, reminders of what she had once known, what she had once lost. When dessert arrived, tiny chocolate cakes dusted with sugar, Ethan leaned slightly toward her, his voice low, meant only for her. "This feels right, doesn't it?" Samantha's fork paused. Her eyes darted to the twins, who were giggling as they smeared chocolate on each other's plates. Then back to him. "Don't," she whispered, her tone sharper than she intended. "Don't make it sound easy." His gaze didn't waver. "It's not easy. But it's worth it." Her chest tightened, breath shallow. She wanted to argue, to shut it down before hope could take root. But she couldn't, not with the way he looked at her, not with the way her heart betrayed her. On the drive home, the twins fell asleep in the back seat, their heads resting against each other. The silence between Samantha and Ethan stretched, heavy with words unsaid. When he pulled up in front of the house, he didn't immediately unlock the doors. Instead, he turned toward her, his face shadowed by the dim streetlight. "Sam," he said softly, his tone stripped of all the armor she had once known him to wear. "I'm not asking for forgiveness overnight. I'm asking for a chance. For them. For us." Her breath hitched. The words hung in the air, fragile, dangerous, powerful. She turned, looking at her sleeping children. Their little faces glowed with innocence, untouched by doubt. When she faced him again, her voice trembled. "Ethan, if you break their hearts again, I'll never forgive you." He didn't flinch. "I won't," he said with quiet certainty. "I promise." And for the first time in years, Samantha couldn't find the strength to doubt him. That night, after tucking the twins into bed, she stood by her window, staring at the stars. Her phone buzzed again. A simple message from him, "Good night, Sam. I'll see you tomorrow." She pressed the phone to her chest, eyes closing. The wall she had built for so long trembled, and though she whispered to herself, "Don't believe him, don't let him in," deep down she already knew, Ethan Wright had found his way back into her heart. The next morning bloomed with golden light spilling across the Davis home. Samantha woke to the sound of laughter echoing from downstairs. For a fleeting second, she thought Ethan's voice was among them, the kind of dream that felt too real. But when she sat up, rubbing her eyes, it was only Kyle and Kenzie, their small feet pattering across the kitchen floor while Diana tried to herd them toward the breakfast table. "Mommy, hurry!" Kenzie squealed as Samantha stepped in, hair still tousled from sleep. "Daddy said he's coming today after work. He promised." Samantha froze at the stove, her hand tightening around the spatula. Of course he promised. Ethan always had a way of making his words sound like absolutes. And the twins, they believed him without question. She forced a smile, masking the unease twisting in her chest. "We'll see, honey. Eat your breakfast first." Diana caught her gaze, one brow raised knowingly. "He called you last night, didn't he?" Samantha busied herself with flipping pancakes, avoiding her aunt's sharp eyes. "It was nothing. Just, thank yous. For dinner." Diana's voice carried more meaning than words. "Careful, Sam. You're walking the edge of something you've been trying to avoid for years." Samantha didn't answer. Because deep down, she knew Diana was right. By noon, Samantha was at work, trying to focus on spreadsheets and client calls. But her mind betrayed her, drifting back to the way Ethan's eyes had held hers at dinner, the way his voice softened only for her. She hated it, hated how easily he unsettled her. Her phone buzzed. A message. "Ethan, dinner was perfect. Thank you. I meant what I said, I'm not going anywhere." She stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She should ignore it. She would ignore it. And yet, her fingers hovered, typing, deleting, typing again. Finally, she sent the smallest reply, "The kids enjoyed it." Almost instantly, his response came. "Ethan, and you?" Her pulse skipped. She locked her phone, shoving it into her bag as if burying the question. That evening, when the doorbell rang, the twins raced to open it before Samantha could protest. Ethan stepped inside, carrying a bag in one hand. The sight of him in rolled-up sleeves, tie loosened, made her throat go dry. "What's that?" Kyle asked eagerly, pointing at the bag. "Dinner," Ethan said with a grin, lifting it. "Thought I'd save your mom the trouble." Samantha crossed her arms, trying to sound stern. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." His tone was simple, disarming. "Besides, I remembered your favorite." Her lips parted, a protest ready, but the scent of garlic and herbs drifted out, betraying her with the faintest flicker of hunger and memory. He hadn't forgotten. The four of them sat at the table, the twins animated as ever. Between laughter and small arguments over bread rolls, Samantha found herself watching Ethan. The way he cut Kyle's meat without being asked. The way he wiped chocolate from Kenzie's chin. The way he listened, to them, to her, like every word mattered. It was dangerous. Too dangerous. After dinner, Diana whisked the kids away for baths, leaving Samantha and Ethan alone in the kitchen. The silence stretched, thick and charged. Ethan leaned casually against the counter, arms folded, watching her as she cleared plates. "You don't have to do that," he said quietly. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, stacking dishes. "You're not." His voice was softer now. "You've been carrying everything alone for too long." Her hands stilled in the sink. She turned, meeting his gaze, anger and longing colliding inside her. "And whose fault is that, Ethan? You left. You made those choices." He didn't flinch. "I did. And I regret every damn one of them. But I can't change the past, Sam. All I can do is fight for now, for us, for the kids." Her throat tightened. She wanted to shout at him, to push him away before the cracks widened further. But instead, her voice trembled. "Don't make promises you can't keep. I won't let you hurt them again." Ethan stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of his cologne, warm and familiar. His eyes were steady, unyielding. "Then don't let me hurt them. Hold me accountable. But don't shut me out, Sam. Not when we both know you still feel it." Her breath caught, her body betraying her with the shiver that ran through her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. And then, "Mommy, Daddy, story time." Kenzie's voice rang out, breaking the moment. Samantha blinked, stumbling back, the spell shattering. Ethan's lips curved faintly, almost knowingly, before he turned toward the sound of his children's voices. As she watched him disappear into the living room, their laughter following, Samantha pressed a hand against her chest, whispering to herself, "What are you doing to me?" Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep on either side of him during story time, Ethan gently laid them in bed, tucking the blankets around their small shoulders. Samantha stood in the doorway, her heart aching at the picture he painted so effortlessly: father, protector, presence. When he finally rose, meeting her eyes across the dimly lit hallway, she felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on her. This was no longer about whether he would stay. It was about whether she could let him. The house had fallen silent, but Samantha couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, her knees drawn up, the faint glow of the lamp brushing across her tired face. In the room across the hall, she could hear the soft rhythm of Kyle's snores and Kenzie's gentle tossing. They were at peace. She wasn't. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message. "Ethan, I didn't want to leave tonight. Not when it finally felt like home." Her chest tightened. She typed a reply, deleted it, then typed again. Finally, she left the phone face down and buried her head in her hands. A knock startled her. 3 gentle taps. She froze, her heart hammering. Slowly, she crossed the room and cracked the door. Ethan stood there in the dim hallway, still in his shirt from earlier, sleeves rolled, hair slightly undone. His eyes, however, were steady. "Sam," he whispered. "Can we talk?" She wanted to slam the door, to tell him no, to remind him of every wall she'd built. But instead, she found herself stepping aside. He entered quietly, his presence filling the small space. They sat across from each other at the small table in her room, silence stretching long and sharp. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely, waiting. Finally, Samantha spoke, her voice low but edged with steel. "You can't just walk in and act like nothing happened, Ethan. Do you think dinners and bedtime stories erase the years you were gone?" He didn't flinch. "No. I don't expect them to. I know I failed you. Failed them. I know what I lost. His voice softened. But I also know what I can still fight for. Her throat tightened, tears threatening. You don't understand. Every time they ask about you, every time they draw those pictures with all of us together, it cuts me. Because I don't know if you'll stay this time. I don't know if I can trust you. Ethan's jaw tightened. He leaned closer, his eyes locked on hers. Then let me earn it. Don't hand me forgiveness. Don't give me trust. Let me work for it, day after day, until you can't deny it anymore. Her breath hitched. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay something fierce, unshakable. You talk like it's so easy, she whispered. No, he said, shaking his head. It won't be easy. But tell me, Sam, do you really want me gone? Do you really want to shut me out when I'm right here, ready to stay? She couldn't answer, because the truth scared her more than the lies ever did. The silence thickened, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Samantha looked away, her hands trembling on the edge of the table. She hated how much his presence affected her, how much her heart still remembered. You left me once, she finally said, her voice cracking. I can't go through that again. Ethan's expression softened, pain flickering across his features. Slowly, he reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers but not touching. I know. And that's why I won't leave again. Not them. Not you. Her tears slipped, unbidden. She turned her face away, ashamed of the weakness she felt. But Ethan didn't press, didn't move closer. He simply sat there, steady, waiting, for her to believe him, for her to let him back in. Minutes stretched into hours. By the time Ethan finally rose to leave, the sky outside had begun to pale with the earliest hint of dawn. He paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. I'll be back tomorrow, he said softly. Not because I want to intrude. But because I meant what I said, Sam. I'm staying. For them. For you. And then he was gone, the quiet click of the door echoing louder than it should have. Samantha stood there, her hand pressed to her chest, her tears drying against her skin. She wanted to scream at him, to beg him not to make promises, to protect her fragile heart. But deep inside, buried beneath fear and hurt, a dangerous truth pulsed. She didn't want him gone. Not anymore. The next evening, Ethan returned. The twins greeted him like the sun itself had walked into their home. Samantha tried to hold herself together, but when she saw Kenzie curl into his side and Kyle beam up at him with pride, something inside her softened against her will. Later, after homework and laughter, after dinner and bedtime stories, Samantha found herself alone with Ethan again. This time, in the quiet glow of the living room. He was seated on the sofa, his tie loose, his shirt open at the collar. He looked at her, his gaze calm, patient, certain. Sam, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know you're scared. But let me prove it. Not with words. With presence. With every single day I don't walk away. Her chest tightened, breath unsteady. She lowered herself into the chair across from him, her heart beating too fast. This was no longer about dinners, or story time, or even promises. It was about whether she would let herself believe in him again. And for the first time in years, she didn't whisper no. The following week unfolded like a quiet storm. Ethan kept coming back, sometimes with dinner, sometimes with nothing more than his presence. He didn't push, didn't demand. He played with the kids, helped with homework, washed dishes when Samantha turned away. Every day, he built his place back into their lives, brick by careful brick. And Samantha felt the walls around her cracking. One evening, rain pattered gently against the windows, the house filled with the smell of cinnamon from Diana's baking. Kyle and Kenzie were sprawled on the rug, building towers with blocks. Ethan sat with them, letting them climb over him, laughing when Kyle knocked down a tower dramatically. Samantha watched from the kitchen doorway, arms folded, heart betraying her with its ache. He looked so natural there. Too natural. Later, when the twins were asleep, Ethan lingered in the living room, gazing at the rain-streaked window. Samantha entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. She placed one on the table in front of him without a word, then sat opposite. Thank you, he murmured, his voice low, his eyes meeting hers for just a heartbeat too long. They sipped in silence, the rain the only soundtrack. Finally, Samantha set her mug down, her hands trembling slightly. You make it look easy, she whispered. He frowned softly. What do you mean? Sliding back into their lives. Into this house. Like you never left. His expression tightened. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Sam, it's not easy. Every smile they give me feels like a gift I don't deserve. Every laugh, it reminds me of the years I missed. I hate myself for that. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again. Her chest ached, the words cutting deep. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the scars he'd left ran too deep. You hurt me, Ethan, she said, her voice breaking. You broke me in ways I don't even know how to explain. And now you're here, saying all the right things, doing all the right things, and I don't know if I can survive believing you again. Ethan's jaw clenched. Slowly, he rose and crossed the room, stopping just a breath away from her. He didn't touch her, but the nearness of him stole the air from her lungs. His voice was steady, rough. Then don't believe me yet. Watch me. Test me. Let me earn it, piece by piece. But don't push me out, Sam. Because every second I'm here, every second I see you, I know this is where I belong. Her eyes burned, tears threatening. Her hands gripped the edge of the couch, fighting the pull toward him. You make it sound so simple. He shook his head, his voice a whisper. It's anything but simple. It's everything. The silence stretched, charged, and heavy. Samantha's breath came shallow, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to give in. Instead, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, if you break me again, Ethan, there won't be anything left. His eyes shone, fierce and unflinching. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I don't. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the storm outside echoing the one between them. And though she didn't move, didn't reach for him, something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the smallest thread of surrender. Days passed, and with them, the fragile rhythm of something new. Samantha still guarded herself, but her guard was weaker now, her eyes lingering longer on Ethan when he laughed with the kids, her lips softening when he carried sleeping Kenzie to bed. And one night, when the twins were at Diana's for a sleepover, Samantha found herself alone with him again. The house felt too quiet, the air between them too thick. Ethan sat across from her at the dining table, papers spread out for Kyle's project they'd been helping with. You're still here, she murmured without meaning to. He looked up, his gaze steady, unwavering. I told you. I'm not leaving. Something inside her snapped. Or perhaps it finally gave in. She pushed the papers aside, her hands trembling. Why now, Ethan? Why after all this time? You had years. You had chances. Why now? He inhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. Because I finally understood what mattered. And because I was a coward before. I thought I could build a life without you, without them. I was wrong. So damn wrong. And I won't waste another second pretending otherwise. Her eyes filled, her breath breaking. You can't just walk back in and expect me to. To what? He pressed, his voice low, raw. To feel what you already feel. To admit what's already here. Her lips parted, denial ready on her tongue. But the truth, hot, terrifying, undeniable, rose instead. She still loved him. Despite everything. She closed her eyes, tears spilling. I hate you for making me feel this way. Ethan's breath hitched. He leaned forward, his voice rough with urgency. Then hate me. But don't shut me out. Because whether you admit it or not, Sam, you still love me too. The room spun, her walls collapsing under the weight of his words. She opened her eyes, meeting his. And in that moment, for the first time in years, she didn't run from the truth. She still loved Ethan Wright. And that terrified her more than anything. The storm between them had been building for weeks, but that night, quiet house, empty halls, no Diana, no children, the air itself seemed to tremble with everything unspoken. Samantha sat frozen at the table, Ethan's words ringing in her ears like a heartbeat. You still love me too. She wanted to deny it, to push him back across the ocean of mistakes that divided them, but her silence betrayed her. Her silence was an answer. Ethan rose slowly, his chair scraping softly against the hardwood. He didn't move with arrogance or assumption, he moved with a reverence that made her chest ache. He stopped just in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, close enough that every memory of him, his laugh, his touch, the way he once held her, rushed back like a flood. Samantha, he whispered, her name a plea and a prayer. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, as if holding on to the last fragments of her defenses. Don't, she breathed, her voice trembling. "Don't make this harder than it already is." His gaze searched hers, raw and unyielding. "I'm not here to make it harder. I'm here because I can't stay away anymore." The air between them burned. She lifted her eyes, meeting his fully, and for a heartbeat she let herself drown in them. The world fell away, the years of anger, the scars of abandonment, and all that remained was the man she had once loved with everything inside her. The man who still had the power to undo her with nothing more than a look. Her breath shuddered. "Ethan!" He reached for her, slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. His fingers brushed against her hand, tentative at first, then firmer when she didn't retreat. The contact sent a spark racing up her arm, igniting places she had long buried beneath duty and grief. "You feel it too," he said softly, his thumb grazing her knuckles. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping free. "That's the problem," she whispered. "I never stopped feeling it." The confession tore from her like a wound reopening. Ethan's breath caught, his hand tightening over hers, grounding her even as her world threatened to unravel. In the silence that followed, he leaned closer, not enough to steal, only enough to ask. The faintest brush of his forehead against hers, the ghost of a touch that lingered in the space between restraint and surrender. Samantha's chest rose and fell, her body betraying her as it leaned toward him. Her lips parted, trembling inches from his, the taste of memory and longing suspended in the air. But at the last moment, she turned her face, pressing her forehead against his shoulder instead, a sob escaping her throat. "I can't," she cried, voice muffled against him. "Not yet. Not like this." Ethan exhaled shakily, his arms moving around her, not to claim, but to hold. His embrace was steady, unselfish, protective. He buried his face in her hair, his voice rough with restraint. "Then we'll wait. As long as it takes. I'll wait." And there, in the quiet storm of their almost, Samantha broke down in his arms. Not because she was weak, but because for the first time in years, she didn't have to be strong alone. The following days were heavier, charged with the weight of what almost happened. Samantha avoided the subject, but Ethan didn't push. Instead, he doubled down on his presence, school pickups, bedtime routines, Saturday morning pancakes. He was weaving himself into their lives with threads of patience and consistency. But the undercurrent between them grew stronger. Every brush of his hand when they reached for the same plate, every glance that lingered too long across the room, every laugh that drew them closer, it all pulled at the fragile line she had drawn. One night, after the twins had gone to bed, they found themselves again in the living room. Samantha sat curled on the sofa, a book in her lap she hadn't turned a page of in half an hour. Ethan sat in the chair across from her, sipping tea, his gaze never far. Finally, she set the book aside, meeting his eyes. "You're breaking me down," she whispered, almost accusing. He set his cup down slowly. "No, Sam. I'm reminding you of what's already there." Her lips parted, breath trembling. "And if I let you in again? If I fall?" He stood, crossing the space until he was in front of her. He knelt down, his eyes level with hers, steady and unwavering. "Then I'll catch you. Every single time." Her heart thundered, her walls trembling. And though she didn't say it, didn't dare, a truth bloomed in her chest like fire. She was already falling. That night, after he left, Samantha stood at the window, watching the taillights of his car fade into the distance. Her hand pressed against the glass, her reflection staring back at her with tear-bright eyes. For the first time in years, she whispered the words she had buried deep inside, words she wasn't ready to say aloud to him yet. "I still love you." And in that whispered confession to the empty night, Samantha Davis knew her life would never be the same again. The morning after that near confession, Samantha moved about the kitchen like a ghost. The kettle hissed, the toaster clicked, the twins chattered over cereal and crayons scattered across the table, but her mind was elsewhere, still standing in the living room, Ethan's voice in her ears, "Then I'll catch you." Every single time. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt again the warmth of his arms, the steadiness of his heartbeat against her cheek, the way her body had betrayed her by leaning into him instead of pulling away. "Mommy!" Kyle tugged at her sleeve, holding up a half-colored drawing of a rocket. "Do you think Daddy will help me finish this later?" Her breath caught. She forced a smile, stroking his hair. "Maybe, sweetheart. We'll see." But the truth was, she knew Ethan would, because he was making sure he never missed a chance. By the time she dropped the children at school, her nerves were frayed. She sat in the car for several long minutes, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back, eyes rimmed with sleepless nights, lips pressed thin against words she was too afraid to say. Her phone buzzed on the seat. Ethan Wright. She hesitated before answering. Hello. Sam, his voice came warm, steady. Can you meet me for lunch today? Just you. Her stomach twisted. Ethan, Please, he cut in gently. No pressure. Just, let me sit across from you, without distractions, without the kids. I need to talk. We need to talk. Her silence stretched. The hum of traffic filled her ears, her pulse racing. Finally, she whispered, 1 hour. The restaurant was quiet, tucked away on a side street she rarely visited. It wasn't one of his polished business haunts, nor a place bustling with noise. It was small, warm, intimate, like he had deliberately chosen somewhere stripped of pretense. Ethan was already there, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. When she walked in, he stood immediately, pulling out the chair for her. She hated how natural it felt, hated that her body still remembered the rhythm of his gestures. They ordered, and for a while, silence reigned. She fiddled with her napkin, avoiding his gaze, while he studied her with quiet intensity. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice low. Sam, I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. Her heart slammed. She lifted her eyes slowly, bracing herself. I was a coward, he began, his words heavy. Back then, when everything fell apart between us, I thought walking away was protecting you. Protecting the kids. I told myself you'd be better off without me, that I'd only ruin you. But the truth. He swallowed hard. The truth is, I was scared. Scared of not being enough. Scared of failing you. Her throat tightened. Anger and sorrow tangled in her chest. You did fail me, she whispered. He nodded, the pain in his eyes sharp. I know. And I'll regret it until my last breath. But I'm here now, Sam. And I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I'm asking you to let me show you, every day, in every way, that I can be the man you and the kids deserve. Her hand trembled around her glass. Tears stung, but she blinked them back. You can't just erase the years, Ethan. You can't walk in and expect everything to be the same. I don't want the same, he said, his tone fierce with quiet determination. I want better. I want to build something new, with you, with them. Not as a visitor. Not as a stranger at birthdays and school plays. As a father. As, his voice softened. As the man by your side. Her heart stuttered. She looked down, unable to hold the weight of his gaze. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a shaky exhale, she whispered, the children, they already see you as a promise. If you break that again, Ethan, it will destroy them. It will destroy me. I won't, he vowed, his hand inching across the table but stopping just short of hers. I swear to you, Sam. No more broken promises. The air between them trembled. She felt the pull, the dangerous gravity of what he was asking. Her lips parted, her chest rising and falling as if she were drowning. Then the waiter arrived, breaking the spell. Plates clattered onto the table, smiles forced, polite nods exchanged. But the storm lingered, thick and unrelenting. That night, after the twins were asleep, Samantha sat alone on the balcony, the city glowing beneath the dark sky. She pressed her knees to her chest, her phone in her hand. Ethan's words replayed over and over, wrapping around her heart like chains. Inside, the children had left their drawings on the coffee table, pictures of stick-figure families, always with mommy and daddy holding hands. Always with smiles. Her tears slipped free, silent against her cheeks. She whispered into the night, to no one and to him all at once. What if I can't survive loving you again? And yet, deep in her chest, another voice whispered back, quiet, persistent, undeniable. What if you can't survive not loving him? The days that followed felt different, subtle shifts that Samantha couldn't ignore, no matter how hard she tried. Ethan was everywhere, yet not in the suffocating way she had once feared. He was present in the little things, the unnoticed details. He started showing up at school pickups, not dressed in his immaculate suit but in rolled-up sleeves, hair tousled from the breeze, holding a snack in one hand because he remembered Kyle hated going home hungry. He carried Kenzie's oversized backpack without complaint, letting her chatter endlessly about her latest art project. At first, Samantha kept her distance, watching warily from the sidelines. But day by day, she saw the twins' eyes light up in ways she hadn't seen in years. Their laughter grew fuller, their steps quicker when they spotted him waiting. And each time Ethan looked up and met her gaze across the parking lot, his expression was steady, like he was silently saying, "I'm not going anywhere." One evening, Diana found Samantha folding laundry in the living room, her movements tense, mechanical. "He's proving himself," Diana said casually, sipping her tea as she leaned against the doorway. Samantha glanced up, startled. "Who?" Her aunt smirked. "Don't play innocent. You know who. The man who's been orbiting this house like a planet caught in your gravity." Samantha sighed, sitting back against the sofa cushions. "He's trying too hard." "Or maybe he's finally trying enough," Diana countered, her voice gentle now. "Sam, I've seen the way he looks at you. That man isn't here for a season. He's here for good, if you let him be." Samantha looked down at the small shirt in her lap, her fingers trembling against the soft cotton. "But what if he breaks us again? What if he breaks me again?" Her aunt crossed the room, setting a hand over hers. "Then at least you'll know you gave him the chance to prove himself. But keeping him at arm's length won't protect you, it'll only hurt you both." Later that night, Samantha found herself standing outside the twins' bedroom door. The soft glow of a nightlight spilled into the hallway, illuminating the crayon drawings taped haphazardly across the wall. She peeked inside. Kyle was fast asleep, his rocket book clutched against his chest. But Kenzie stirred, blinking sleepy eyes when she saw her mother. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice thick with drowsiness. "When is Daddy staying for a sleepover?" Samantha's heart clenched. She knelt by the bed, brushing back her daughter's hair. "Daddy has his own home, sweetheart." Kenzie pouted, her small fingers twisting in the blanket. "But he looks lonely when he leaves. I don't want him to be lonely anymore." Tears stung Samantha's eyes. She kissed Kenzie's forehead, murmuring, "Sleep, baby. We'll talk tomorrow." But when she rose and closed the door, her chest ached with a truth she couldn't ignore. The children didn't just want Ethan, they needed him. The next day, Samantha tested him, subtly, almost unconsciously. When Kyle begged for help with his rocket experiment, she let Ethan take the lead. She watched from the kitchen doorway as Ethan crouched on the floor, sleeves pushed up, explaining thrust and gravity with a patience that surprised her. Kyle's face glowed with pride when the little model shot into the air, Ethan cheering just as loudly as his son. When Kenzie asked for someone to braid her hair, Samantha hesitated, waiting to see if Ethan would fumble. To her shock, he knelt with determination, tongue caught between his teeth as he carefully separated strands, producing a lopsided but earnest braid. Kenzie giggled, hugging him around the neck, and Ethan laughed with her, promising he'd get better with practice. Each small moment chipped away at the walls around Samantha's heart. Each act of patience, each smile he gave the twins, each glance he stole at her when he thought she wasn't looking, it all whispered the same truth. He wasn't just here to visit. He was rebuilding. But rebuilding required more than smiles and promises. It demanded trust. One evening, as the children slept and Diana was out visiting a friend, Ethan lingered in the doorway, watching Samantha tidy the living room. The silence between them was thick with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, he spoke. "Sam, let me ask you something. Not as the father of your children. Just as a man who still loves you." Her hands stilled. Slowly, she turned. His eyes were steady, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "What would it take," he asked softly, "for you to believe in me again?" Her chest tightened, her throat thick with unspoken words. She wanted to say nothing, "It's too late." She wanted to say everything, "You'd need to give me the years back that you stole." But instead, her lips parted on a whisper she hadn't meant to speak. "Time. And proof." Ethan's jaw tensed, but a spark lit in his eyes. He stepped closer, his voice low and certain. "Then that's what I'll give you. Every day. For as long as it takes." And though she said nothing more, Samantha felt it then, the shift, the crack in her defenses. For the first time, she wasn't just afraid of what he could destroy. She was afraid of what they could rebuild. The following week unfolded like a quiet test, though Samantha never admitted it aloud. Ethan seemed to sense it, answering every unspoken challenge with an unwavering patience that unnerved her. He wasn't chasing her with grand gestures or romantic declarations. Instead, he was weaving himself back into their lives in ways so ordinary, so consistent, that she couldn't help but notice. On Monday, he was waiting outside the school when the twins spilled out with their backpacks bouncing against their little frames. Samantha had planned to be there first, but traffic held her back. By the time she arrived, Kyle was already babbling about his spelling test while Ethan tied Kenzie's loose shoelace with quiet precision. The sight sent a ripple through her chest, so natural, so effortless, as though he had never left. On Wednesday, Ethan showed up at the house unannounced, holding takeout containers from Samantha's favorite Thai place. "I figured you didn't have time to cook after work," he said simply, setting the bags on the counter. She almost argued, but when the twins squealed with delight, she let it go. On Friday, when Kyle tripped during soccer practice and scraped his knee, Ethan knelt instantly, steadying his son with gentle hands. "You're tougher than that field, buddy," he murmured, his voice steady, comforting. Samantha had been watching from the bleachers, her heart thudding as Kyle clung to his father's neck, tears already forgotten. Every day, Ethan was there. And every day, Samantha felt her resolve tremble. But it was Saturday night that changed everything. The twins had begged for a family movie night, dragging pillows and blankets into the living room until the floor resembled a nest. Samantha sat at the edge of the couch, trying to maintain some distance, while Ethan settled beside the children on the floor. Halfway through the film, Kenzie fell asleep against his shoulder, clutching her stuffed rabbit, while Kyle curled against his side, breathing deep and even. Ethan glanced up at Samantha then, his eyes catching hers in the flickering light. "They trust me," he whispered, his voice low enough not to disturb the children. "I want you to trust me too." Her throat tightened. She should have looked away. She should have reinforced the boundary. But she didn't. Instead, she let herself look, really look, at the man who had once been her everything, the man who had broken her heart, the man who was slowly, piece by piece, trying to mend it. For the first time, she whispered back, "You're doing better than I expected." It was the smallest of concessions, but the way his lips curved, soft, grateful, relieved, made her heart lurch. Later that night, after Ethan carried the twins to bed one by one, he returned to the living room. Samantha was still there, hugging her knees, the glow of the TV casting shadows across her face. "Sam," he began softly, careful not to startle her. "I meant what I said. I don't want to just be here for them. I want to be here for you." She shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can let you all the way back in. I don't know if I'm strong enough to risk it again." He crouched in front of her, his expression steady, earnest. "Then don't think about forever. Think about now. Think about tomorrow. Let me prove myself one day at a time." Her eyes glistened. "And if you fail?" "I won't," he vowed, his voice fierce in its quiet certainty. "But if I stumble, I'll get up, and I'll try again. Because this time, I'm not leaving." Her breath hitched, and for the first time, Samantha didn't push him away. She didn't agree either, but she let him take her hand, his thumb brushing lightly against her skin. The touch was fragile, tentative, but it was more powerful than any declaration. The days blurred into weeks. Ethan became a fixture, no longer an outsider peering in but a presence in the rhythm of their lives. He helped with homework, fixed the squeaky hinge on the back door, even learned how to make pancakes shaped like stars because Kenzie had asked once in passing. And Samantha. Samantha found herself watching him more often than she wanted to admit. The way his eyes softened when the twins laughed. The way his brow furrowed in concentration as he braided Kenzie's hair, determined to get it right. The way he looked at her, always steady, always patient, never pushing too hard. One evening, Diana caught her staring through the kitchen window at Ethan and the kids in the yard, playing an impromptu game of tag. "You're falling again," her aunt said softly. Samantha's chest tightened. "I can't." Diana touched her arm gently. "You already are." But the past wasn't done with them. A week later, as Samantha walked into the cafe where Ethan waited for their usual lunch, she spotted a woman standing beside him. Beautiful, poised, with a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. The woman was speaking to Ethan, leaning in too close, her hand brushing his arm as if it belonged there. Samantha froze at the sight, her heart twisting with a sharp ache she hadn't felt in years. Ethan looked up then, his gaze finding hers instantly. His expression shifted, surprise, then warmth, then something else entirely. "Sam," he said quickly, standing as though the world had narrowed down to her alone. But Samantha's breath caught. The storm she had feared was here, brewing again, threatening everything she had just begun to let herself feel. Samantha froze in the doorway of the cafe, her hand tightening around the strap of her bag. The woman beside Ethan had the kind of polished elegance that didn't need introduction. Sleek hair, tailored coat, manicured fingers resting far too casually on his sleeve. Her smile was sharp, almost territorial, and it sliced through Samantha's fragile calm. For a heartbeat, Samantha considered walking away. Pretending she had never come. Pretending she hadn't seen the way the woman leaned in, hadn't felt the ache bloom deep in her chest. But Ethan's eyes found her across the room, and his entire posture shifted, like someone caught in the middle of a storm who had just spotted the lighthouse. "Sam," he said, rising to his feet with an urgency that startled even the woman beside him. "You're here." Her voice was low, careful. "I was. Maybe I shouldn't be." The woman's eyes flicked toward Samantha, narrowing slightly. "And you must be." Leaving, Ethan cut in, his tone clipped. "This isn't the time." The woman's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, touching his arm again. "We'll talk later, Ethan. You know how to reach me." Samantha's chest tightened at the familiarity in her tone. She turned to leave, but Ethan was already moving, catching up with her just outside the cafe. "Sam, wait." She spun on him, anger and hurt colliding in her gaze. "Who was that?" "Someone who doesn't matter," he said quickly, his voice steady but pleading. "A colleague. She's persistent, but she's nothing more than that." Samantha's arms folded tightly across her chest. "She didn't look like nothing." "Because she doesn't know what no means," he countered, his voice firm now. "Sam, you have to believe me, I'm not entertaining her. I haven't entertained anyone. Not since," his words faltered, his throat working. "Not since I realized I never stopped loving you." The sincerity in his tone wavered her anger, but the ache remained. "I don't know if I can handle this, Ethan. One shadow of doubt, one reminder of the past, and it feels like everything is unraveling again." He stepped closer, his eyes holding hers with quiet intensity. "Then let me prove to you that I won't let history repeat itself. Don't punish yourself for trusting me again. Punish me if I fail. But don't punish yourself." Her breath caught. The world around them blurred, voices, traffic, the rustle of autumn leaves. All she could feel was the pull of his words, the truth in his eyes, and the dangerous possibility that maybe, just maybe, he really had changed. That night, Samantha sat on the balcony with Diana, her voice shaking as she recounted the encounter. "She touched him like she had every right," Samantha whispered, her arms hugging herself tight. "And for 1 second, I believed she did. For 1 second, I was back in the past, watching him slip away from me again." Her aunt was quiet, sipping her tea, her gaze steady. "And how did he respond?" Samantha exhaled shakily. "He dismissed her. He followed me. He told me I was the only one." "And you don't believe him?" "I want to," Samantha admitted, her voice breaking. "But wanting isn't the same as trusting." Diana reached over, squeezing her hand gently. "Trust isn't built in declarations, Sam. It's built in consistency. Watch him. Not her. If he's truly changed, time will tell." Over the next week, Ethan's actions spoke louder than his words. He didn't hide from the situation, he addressed it. One evening, as the twins worked on homework at the table, he handed Samantha his phone without explanation. "Read." Confused, she glanced down at the screen. A string of messages from the woman in the cafe filled the thread, flirtations, invitations, subtle provocations. And Ethan's responses, every single one, were clear and unwavering. "I'm not interested. Stop contacting me. I'm building something with my family again." Samantha's chest tightened. She glanced up at him, her throat thick. "I don't want shadows between us," Ethan said softly. "So I'm showing you everything. No secrets. Not this time." Her eyes stung, and though she didn't reply, something in her walls gave way, just a fraction, but enough. The children, oblivious to the storm swirling around their parents, continued to pull them closer together. One Saturday morning, Kyle asked, "Daddy, are you going to come to our school fair next week?" Ethan smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Kenzie chimed in with a giggle, "Mommy, you should come too. Then we can all go together, like a real family." The word struck Samantha like a bolt. She glanced at Ethan, who held her gaze with something raw, something unspoken. Neither of them answered Kenzie right away, but the silence itself carried weight, an unspoken promise that maybe, just maybe, they could be that again. But healing was never a straight line. One evening, as rain hammered the windows and the children slept, Samantha found herself alone with Ethan in the kitchen. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the tension between them. "You've been doing everything right," she whispered, her back against the counter. The kids adore you. You're showing up. And part of me wants to believe that's enough. But Ethan, her voice cracked. What if you slip again? What if one day, you decide we're not worth it? He stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers but not touching. Then hold me accountable. Don't just wait for me to fall. Push me. Challenge me. Make me prove myself every single day. I want that. I need that. Because this time, Sam, I'm not running. Not from you. Not from us. Her heart thundered, torn between fear and longing. And for the first time, she didn't walk away. She let him stay close, their breaths mingling in the silence, the distance between them narrowing in ways words could no longer define.